Hey guys, it's just a regular guy here, the Dragon Lady's husband. So I just wanted to make a video for her channel, but it's something that I'm not going to do for her channel very often because you guys are here to see her and her Yu-Gi-Oh shenanigans, and with regards to me and my attitude and insight into the game, I don't want that to be a prevalent part of her channel, because you do come to her channel to see her and not necessarily me. And even though I play Yu-Gi-Oh just as much as what my wife does, but I don't want to have a huge sense of importance on her channel, and I certainly don't want to steal any of her thunder. I'm just grateful that she has this channel, and she's enjoying it, and she's enjoying the friendships that she's made on this channel, especially with you guys on her Discord server and the people that she gets to play with on her Twitch and YouTube streams. So guys, for this video, what I wanted to talk about is why I don't play meta decks. I am a rogue player at my very core. And I just wanted to go into, the reasons why playing Rogue has always appealed to me, and why I'll probably never be a meta player. I've played the game since the very beginning, back when the game was released in 2002. I played the game from Legend of Blue Eyes up to Stardust Overdrive, that was released in the 5D series. And I was retired from the game until late 2018, and when my wife got back into it, she actually got me back into it as well. And even back in the early days of the game, guys, I wasn't focused on really building the best decks out there, even though back in the early days of the game, you didn't really have very many options about what cards you could play or what the best strategies would be. But for me, for all the time that I played the game, I've always enjoyed obscure strategies. I've always tried to make decks that were much different than what everyone else normally played, because in a way it kind of gave me a sense of identity that I would play something much different. Because back in the early days of the game, I was very interested into the concept of deck destruction, or decking an opponent out. So back in the early days of the game, I used to make my decks very defensive instead of totally offensive, and I would try to find out multiple ways of trying to deck the opponent out. And back in the old days of the game, when cards like Morphing Jar and Needleworm were so incredibly hard to get because they were tournament pack ultra rares, I tried to formulate alternative strategies. And the most common concept I tried to build my deck on was reusing cards like Cyber Jar and Morphing Jar #2, and keep using card destruction to just keep people drawing cards and sending cards to their hand, or using Giant Trunade to send their entire back row back to their hand, and just recycling card destruction and using Magician of Faith and stuff like that. And even though I never won very often, playing that deck, I always stuck to it. Because I kind of like alternative win conditions like that. But back in the early days of the game, I was a college student and I just had gotten into the workforce, so I didn't really have the money to really build some of the best competitive decks out there. So I just stuck to one archetype and I just kept tooling around with it. And even to this day, I've still never won a tournament. I've gotten second a couple of times. But for me, going into the game right now, I still love playing deck out. I still love playing deck destruction style decks. I like playing decks in which one of the win conditions in which I play is, decking the opponent out. And for me, being an adult, with a full-time job, it's you know, it's not hard for me to build one of the best decks in the game right now, but I don't want to. You know, I know when you play a card game in which the purpose is that you want to win, you know, you want to build the best deck that's going to get you the most wins. And that's completely understandable. I don't personally hate on the meta at all. I really don't. You know, it's but for me, one of the reasons why, you know, I'm always a rogue duelist is that for me, you know, when I do win, and even though it doesn't happen very often, you know, I think for me it's much more rewarding when I can win with a very obscure strategy than, you know, something that's often commonly seen. And it's, you know, for me, it's not about playing the best decks. For me, it's about playing the decks that feel right for me. And it's just that, you know, there are so many cards available in the game right now that you can build any kind of deck that you like. If you have a fondness for a particular archetype, if you have a fondness for a specific type of monsters or a specific attribute or anything like that, there's always many different decks you can build. There's always many different ideas you can implement. I don't think there's any such thing as an original idea, because I feel like just about every idea has been tried, but there's always ways that, you know, you can modify it, you can retool it, you can find something that will work with your strategy. And it's just that, for me, when it comes to this game, I really do love this game. You know, I really do. You know, it's given me some really good friendships. But for me, ultimately, I always try to keep it fun, and I always try to keep it lighthearted. You know, I'm never going to be a competitive duelist. And it's just that, you know, if I ever do win a tournament at a local or, you know, at a regional or anything like that, you know, I want it done on my terms, in the sense that I would rather win on something that I like to play instead of winning on something that everyone is going to play. But in hindsight, that's very unrealistic, because obviously the best decks in the game right now are the best decks for a reason. And, you know, I could easily pay the money to build them, you know, if I truly wanted to win a tournament that badly, but I don't. Because at my very core, I am a deck-out duelist. I'm an Inferno Tempest duelist. That's what I am. Because even though the Empty Jar format's not really a viable format right now with regards to deck-out because of the amount of hand traps that are in the game right now, I find the Inferno Tempest play probably the most viable and most reliable form of deck-out, unless cards eventually get released that, you know, that actually contribute to a deck-out style deck, or you know, a mill style deck. But one of the reasons why, you know, I retired from the game when Stardust Overdrive came out is because a lot of the cards that I used for my old school deck-out builds were actually banned. And there weren't really many other archetypes that I felt comfortable playing that had alternative win conditions, so I pretty much retired from the game then, because I couldn't really play my favorite way of playing the game. But eventually, when my wife got back into the game and I wanted to go back as well, you know, I gave her an idea. I said, you know, one of my favorite old cards has always been the Inferno Tempest, and I said, is there a way that this deck and idea can actually work in this current format? And she said, yeah, it can, because Kaijus exist in the game right now, Lava Golems exist in the game right now, and it's very easy to put a Kaiju on your opponent's side of the field, or a Lava Golem on your opponent's side of the field, and take a 0 attacker and slam into it and activate the Inferno Tempest, and combined with 2 to 3 Necrophases, you can actually deck your opponent out. And that's always been my favorite deck to play, but even though that's my #1 deck, you know, I still haven't won a tournament with it. You know, I've gotten 2nd and 3rd place a couple of times, but I have beaten meta decks with it, even though it doesn't happen very often. But it gives me a sense of pride that, you know, to something that I created or using a very old idea can actually take out one of the best decks in the game, and even though it doesn't really happen very often. You know, currently, you know, on Dueling Nexus right now, I'm about, I think, 220 wins and, you know, 240 losses, and maybe 100 of those wins have actually went up against, you know, the tier 1, the tier 2 meta decks. And it's just that one of the reasons why I love to keep playing that deck is that, can my deck still work against what's considered meta? Because, I don't know, I have an attitude in this game that, you know, I just try to keep it fun. You know, I don't consider myself a salty player, even though I lose more often than I win. But I always have this belief that you should be gracious in defeat and always respectful in victory. And it's one of the reasons why that, you know, that keeps me playing this game. And, you know, and I have plenty of friends that, you know, that have specific old archetypes that they're always going to stay loyal to. You know, one of my really good friends is a Neos player, and he's always trying to find ways to make the Neos cards work in the current format. And, you know, sometimes he does. I even have some really good friends. One of my really good friends is a hardcore dinosaur player. And despite Dinos being one of the best decks right now, he actually won a tournament with a pure Dino Wrestler build. And, you know, I love it when players can do that. I love it when players can take very obscure ideas and try to find a way to make it work, because I think that's the true joy, and the true joy that comes with playing this game is the whole aspect of creativity, because there's thousands of cards available. And it's just that when people can take the time to come up with very obscure and alternative style strategies, that, you know, I love it when people are creative. Like I said, I don't fault people for playing the meta. I really don't. The way I look at it is that it's a nice challenge for me. Can the decks that I play, as gimmicky as they are, can they actually beat a meta deck? And if one of the rare occasions happens that it does, then it makes me feel that much more comfortable about playing the archetypes that I do play. And even though the main deck I do play is a deck out banish deck, you know, my two other favorite archetypes right now is Gravekeepers, because it's a very old school archetype that I've always had a lot of fondness for, because I don't personally do the best with combo decks, because I don't really have a good memory and when it comes to making combo plays and that kind of thing. You know, I prefer more, you know, Floodgate or Control style decks. But another deck that I really like is Valkyries, and I don't think Valkyries will ever be a competitive meta deck. But one of the reasons why I love Valkyries so much is because Siegfried from the Yu-Gi-Oh series is one of my favorite characters of all time, and the Siegfried Joey duel is actually one of my favorite animated duels in the entire Yu-Gi-Oh series. And also, one of my favorite RPG games of all time is Valkyrie Profile. And it's just that the fact that Konami in the Yu-Gi-Oh game decided to make a complete Valkyrie archetype. That was an archetype that I always am, and I always will love to play. And there was one Wednesday tournament that I actually got second place with Valkyries, and I was actually pretty proud of that. You know, my final match was against Madolches, and unfortunately I didn't win that match, because Madolches are pretty good with Swarm, and they can set up a really good board. But, you know, I don't fault people for playing the best decks, because ultimately, you know, even though when it comes to the decks that we do play, you know, we do want to win, and there's nothing wrong with that, which is one of the reasons why, personally, I will never ever consider myself a sore loser, and I will always treat my opponent or the people I play with the utmost respect. You know, one of my really good friends in the game, there's a running joke that he says, "You're the only person that will ever apologize to your opponent for both winning and losing." And in all honesty, I kind of like having that reputation, because I never take the game that seriously, because I truly do love the game that much. And, you know, for any of you guys that watch, if you guys have any original deck ideas that, you know, you actually beat a meta deck with, you know, I would love to hear your story. But ultimately, that's the main reason why I don't play meta decks, is because I stick to strategies that I love about this game. And I'm always and forever going to be a deck out duelist. Will it always be through Infernum Tempest? Probably not. Who knows with this game, there could be other deck out strategies that I might even try, but will a deck out deck ever be a tier 1 meta deck? I highly doubt it. But as long as there is a way or a strategy that ends up where I end up decking an opponent out, I'm certainly going to try it. So anyway, guys, this is Just the Regular Guy, and thanks for watching my insight on why I don't play meta decks. And just like the Dragon Lady says, play the game, not the fame. Take care.